Szanowni Państwo, ofiar naszych przodków nie wolno zdradzić milczeniem. To groby, o których nie wolno zapomnieć.
Ladies and gentlemen, the sacrifice of our ancestors must not be betrayed by silence. These are graves that must not be forgotten. These are wounds of history that require truth, remembrance, and respect. We, Poles, remember our own. We do not abandon them, and we always stand up for them. Respect for our ancestors and honesty toward history are the duty of us all. A nation that loses its memory loses part of its soul. A state that ceases to defend the truth about its history ceases to be the guardian of national respect. Historical truth is not and must never be a bargaining chip. Remembrance of the victims is a moral duty of the Polish state. For the decisive majority of Polish society, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the UPA, remains above all a formation responsible for cruel crimes committed against citizens of the Republic of Poland during the Second World War. The position of the Polish state on this matter has been known for years. In 2016, the Sejm of the Republic of Poland recognized the crimes committed by the OUN and the UPA as genocide. Under that act, July 11th was established as the National Day of Remembrance of the victims of the genocide committed by Ukrainian nationalists. In 2025, this was also confirmed by a special act of law. Facts are not subject to negotiation. They do not change according to political circumstances or needs. The facts are that at least 100,000 Polish citizens were murdered by the UPA in Volhynia, Eastern Galicia, or the Osieczna region, or in Podkarpacie, solely because they were Poles, Jews, or members of other minorities. It is a fact that the victims were inhabitants of villages and small towns, entire families, women, children, and elderly people. They were not soldiers on a battlefield. They were defenseless civilians. They were murdered brutally and bestially. It is also a fact that, to this day, the victims have not received a dignified burial. Therefore, naming one of the Ukrainian military units in a way that refers to the criminals of the UPA has significance that goes far beyond Ukraine's internal affairs. Poland has repeatedly signaled to the Ukrainian side the particular importance of this issue. We conveyed our position and our expectation that the consequences of this decision, including for relations between our states, should be reconsidered. Ultimately, the position of the Ukrainian side did not change. History should not be an obstacle to the future. However, a good future can only be built on truth. Poland has repeatedly shown that it is capable of shaping the future above the burden of the past, but never at the expense of memory. Over recent years, we have consistently built relations with Ukraine based on partnership and dialogue. After I assumed the office of president, together with the president of Ukraine, we made an effort to rebuild trust in areas that remained sources of tension. Progress was achieved on matters that had remained unresolved for decades. The return of St. Nicholas's Church in Kyiv and the consent for searches and exhumations of Polish victims in Ostrowki, Wola Ostrowica, Huta Pieniaka, Holosko, Zbojska, Ugly, and Puzniki were signs that, despite a difficult history, understanding is possible. All these actions gave grounds to believe that Poland and Ukraine were gradually finding a path towards lasting reconciliation. That is why the decision of the Ukrainian authorities to glorify the UPA is not only outrageous, it is also incomprehensible and deeply disappointing. It strikes not only at historical memory, it also strikes at the trust built over years and over recent months. It strikes at the foundation of reconciliation. It strikes at the belief that truth can be a common language for our nations. Even before Russia's attack, Poland was among the countries actively supporting Ukraine's European aspirations. After the Russian invasion in 2022, Poles opened their borders, opened their homes, and opened their hearts to millions of Ukrainians. We all remember those moving images: women, children, the sick and the elderly. Even pets brought out of the flames of war were taken care of at special veterinary points. There were no refugee camps, but there were ordinary homes and hotels. We did what we could to save our neighbors. At that terrible moment, Poland provided unprecedented humanitarian, political, economic, and military aid. We persuaded other countries to provide swift assistance. Today, more than 1.5 million Ukrainians live in Poland. The scale of the financial assistance that we have given to fighting Ukraine amounts to billions of zlotys. As Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, I must also remind you that the Polish army has trained thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. Today we cannot remain indifferent to the fact that some of them will now serve under the banner of the UPA. This is unacceptable to us. I do not recall these figures and data in order to demand gratitude, but I recall them so that everyone may understand why the decision of the President of Ukraine provokes such enormous opposition in us. We too, as a community, bear the costs of this war. We are not fighting directly, but our involvement is exceptional and strong. The Order of the White Eagle is not an ordinary distinction. It is a symbol of the highest trust of the Republic of Poland. It signifies a special bond with the Polish state and a special gratitude of the nation. Such a symbol requires not only merit, but also respect for the values that form the foundation of our community. The President of the Republic of Poland is the Grand Master of the Order of the White Eagle and has a duty to guard the honor of this highest state decoration. This duty also rests with the chapter of the Order of the White Eagle. Therefore, in view of President Vladimir Zelensky's consent to the naming of one of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine after the heroes of the UPA, and after consultation with the chapter, I have decided to withdraw the Order of the White Eagle from the President of Ukraine. At this point, I wish to emphasize that this decision is not directed against the Ukrainian nation. It does not mean a change in the strategic direction of Polish security policy. We have supported and continue to support Ukraine because we know that Russian aggression poses a threat to the security of Poland and of the whole of Europe. Nothing has changed in this assessment. Russia is the aggressor, and Putin is a criminal who bears responsibility for unleashing a war that has brought Europe its greatest armed conflict since the end of the Second World War. Behind every bombed residential district, behind every child forced to flee from war, behind every family separated by violence, stands a decision taken in the Kremlin. This is not merely an accident of history. Poland knows the price of Russian imperialism better than most nations of Europe. We know it not from textbooks, but from history, written in the blood of our ancestors. We know it from the partitions, from Siberia, from deportations, from Katyn, from decades of life behind the Iron Curtain. We know it from the experience of generations from whom attempts were made to take away freedom, dignity, and the right to self-determination. That is why we must not be naive. History has taught us one brutal truth. Freedom is not given once and for all. Every generation must be ready to guard it. Every generation must have the courage to stand on the side of those who are fighting for it today as well. Ukraine has the right to defend its independence, and Poland remains an advocate of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Poland remains ready to cooperate with Ukraine. Poland remains a supporter of dialogue, but Poland will consistently guard the memory of its citizens and the dignity of its own state symbols. Poland will defend its national interests and values. Poland will not agree to the glorification of those who murdered defenseless Polish civilians. Ukraine's path towards European structures also requires readiness to face honestly the difficult pages of its own history. A united Europe was built on the rejection of totalitarianisms and the cult of violence. These principles must apply to everyone. For those who do not understand this, there can be no place in the European Union, and Poland will certainly not allow it.
Ukraina powinna również
Ukraine should also remember that nothing serves the interests of the Kremlin more than conflict between Poles and Ukrainians.
każdy spór dotyczy
Every dispute concerning historical memory weakens our nations and strengthens those who would like to divide and conquer Europe. In our shared history, we have symbols of real, invaluable cooperation in the fight against the common threat posed by aggressive empires. Hetman Petro Konashevich Sahaydachny in the 17th century, Hetman Pilip Orlik in the 18th century, Ataman Simon Petliura in the 20th century. It is on such figures that a culture of memory and accord between our nations can be built well and wisely. This is the kind of cooperation we need. Strengthening a memory poisoned by crime, unfortunately, does not build but spoils and destroys our relations. Therefore, today's decision is not only symbolic in nature, it is also a warning signal. There are boundaries in Polish-Ukrainian relations that must not be crossed. It is also an appeal to our neighbors. Return to the path of truth and mutual respect. Ladies and gentlemen, this is also a lesson for ourselves. We cannot remain indifferent to the affirmation of symbols of crime. We cannot allow the promotion of ideologies responsible for genocide. Just as we reject the symbols of German Nazism and Soviet communism, we must reject the cult of the perpetrators of the Volhynian crime. There is no place in the Polish public sphere for red and black Banderite flags. It is high time this was sanctioned by law. At the same time, there can be no acceptance of equating the UPA with the Home Army or the indomitable soldiers. Unlike the UPA, the High Command of the Home Army warned against blind revenge, forbidding the killing of women and children. Those who spread such lies should be excluded from public debate. They harm Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, we must not forget our history. We must not abandon our memory. We must not surrender the dignity of our victims. This is how we understand our duty towards those who can no longer speak in their own voice. This is how we understand the meaning of the Order of the White Eagle. Poland lives when the nation remembers. Long live Poland.